Welcome back. I'm on the beautiful Caribbean Sea today, walking on coral water as I contemplate the question, how do you overcome limiting beliefs in achieving financial freedom, and what is the necessity of that? It seems to me that overcoming limiting beliefs is a necessary but not sufficient conditions of achieving financial freedom. And we're going to use a case study of Nick, who I met here in the Caribbean at the resort I'm staying at. And I'm going to use him as an illustration of the principle I'd like to make. So Nick is of Indian ancestry. He was born in the U.S. He lived in Redondo Beach. He's about 46 years old. And the Indian part will come into relevance in a second. His beautiful wife, beautiful kids, perfect life. And why he comes from Redondo Beach to the Caribbean for a vacation, I don't know. But his wife tells me that the octopus tastes better here, and the color of the water in the Caribbean is obviously different from the Pacific coast. So the interesting thing about Nick is really the beliefs he had to overcome to do what he did. His dad is like this super achiever, and he had to kind of overcome that. That happens a lot with the second generation of immigrants. They can't quite live up to the example of their parents, right? And in Nick's case, this is particularly the case. So the dad got his engineering undergrad at IIT Delhi, Indian Institute of Technology, Delhi. Now, I was fortunate enough to have studied there as an exchange student in the 80s, and I know exactly how tough it is there. Arguably the most competitive academic institution in the world. When I was there in the early 80s, 2 million people wrote the exam, and there were 600 seats. Today, I believe it's 25 million people write the exam. And I don't know how many seats they have, but it's certainly multiples of the selectivity of an Ivy League in the U.S., of a Harvard, of a Cornell. No comparison in terms of competition. Then after that, as if that wasn't enough, his dad went to Caltech to do his master's. And as I mentioned in my video on Hannibal, Caltech has more Nobel laureates per capita than any other university in the world. That was the home of Feynman, the great physicist, who wrote a great book that I admire very much. And you should read. It's actually quite intelligible. And then, if that wasn't enough for achievement, the father then went on to do a PhD at MIT, decided not to become a teacher, but went to work in the defense industry, hence Redondo Beach. There's actually, believe it or not, a big aerospace presence in Southern California, which has to do with Howard Hughes. He built his Hughes Aeronautics down there. So they have this critical mass of employees and infrastructure, and so there's a lot of defense manufacturers down there. So I want you to imagine what it's like growing up as Nick. You go to the dinner table and you have this dad that's a graduate of IIT, Caltech, and MIT. Now Nick, like a lot of us, was more interested in wine, women, and song in high school than he was in doing well academically. So he wasn't the best student, and he ended up getting into a state school, California State, and I can't remember the campus. I did look it up, but it's a campus in the LA area of California State. And he started in economics, but he had some health issues, and again, academics is perhaps not his forte. So he dropped out after 1 year. he had these terrible migraines and couldn't figure out what was going on. So he's at home, he has these migraines, and picks up a book. And that book was on HTML, which is a programming language. And he finishes the book and he says, this is pretty cool. He starts programming. And then he learns another language. And then another language. And before long, he has learned a couple of languages and he builds a business as an IT strategist. Now, just so you can be familiar with an IT strategist is, he doesn't code as much as he says to a business, I'm going to connect your IT infrastructure to return on equity. I'm going to help you drive share value through your IT infrastructure. So let's talk about, this is what he says to his clients, let's talk about how many layers you need, which layer the data resides in, which subcontractor is the best for each layer, what it is you're trying to achieve, what it looks like. And I, Nick, he tells his clients, will be your one source of everything. You give me the money, I'll give it to subcontractors, I'll design it as the architect, if you will, of IT systems, and you can get yourself a system going. And then he becomes very successful enough to live on Redondo Beach. So, like Garrett, our hero from the last video we did, there's a lot of similarities. Notice Garrett also dropped out of college. There seems to be some correlation between dropping out of college and being good in IT, it seems. And the correlation, honestly, is that IT is a new subject, so you don't really need this pedigree. You can pick it up on your own. And Nick builds this very successful business. And when I heard this story, I was kind of amazed, because there's really two beliefs going on. One is, I don't have to get a PhD from MIT, which is the kind of feedback you get by having breakfast with your dad for 18 years. And the second is that he can teach himself whatever he needs to learn, right? What would have kept me from doing what he did is I would have still felt that I needed a degree. That would have been my limiting belief. And I would have felt that I needed some kind of specialized knowledge to pursue IT, because he knew nothing about IT when he started. And possibly most of us would have the limiting belief, let me go get a job with a salary where somebody else takes the risk so I can pay my mortgage or my house or whatever. So the similarities with Garrett are very interesting. The other similarity is, if I remember correctly, he doesn't have a mortgage, he's paid it off. So we have a 46-year-old that's built a business out of nothing. He doesn't look back, he doesn't feel insecure. He completely invented himself. Like, this is the American story. He had nothing, and he invented himself. Now, actually, he did have something. He had the example of his father. He had the value of education. But he had, I guess, this self-confidence of being in a family that has enough money to pay the rent. It's not like he was raised by a single mother and they were hopping from motel to motel. But it amazes me what Nick has been able to do. So Nick is in a position where he probably is within 5 years of early financial freedom. As I mentioned before, if you're 21, set yourself a 20-year time horizon for early financial freedom. But if you're older, liquidate your assets, convert them into perpetual passive cash flow, and within 5 years you should be able to do what you need to do. And I think any time after 41 is doable. So in the case of Nick, he didn't necessarily from day one put aside 40% of his income and buy strips of cash flow, but he can sell his house sell his business, convert the cash into perpetual passive cash flow, and become financially independent right now. And when I told him that, that was kind of like a revelation to him. He never thought of it that way. When I told him avoid equity, go into debt, invest in debt, that is, be a lender, become a bank, that was kind of a revelation to him. When I told him that you got to buy the bonds themselves or the loan paper yourself, don't go to mutual funds, that was a revelation to him. So a lot of what I say is a little counterintuitive, but it's what the investor class does, right? Because the key is competitive advantage. Don't take risks you don't understand. As opposed to Sanjay, who loves taking risks he can't understand, and as a consequence is not financially free, although he thinks he is. He is sitting on a lot of paper gains, which are absolutely useless. So the mentality of stopping pursuing capital gains and harvesting the capital you have and creating a side income is something that's very counterintuitive. It's not what your advisors will tell you. Why won't they tell you that? Because it's not in their interest to do that. I heard somebody at this resort say to me that, he loves learning about finance by going to his financial advisor because his financial advisor teaches him a lot. And what I pointed out to him is his financial advisor teaches him a lot in one respect, but not in others. For example, if there are 10 alternatives, your financial advisor will give you 2 of the 10 alternatives, but not all 10. So no, you don't get the whole picture from your financial advisor. If you want to teach yourself about finance, you need to do it on your own. You're your own general manager. You're your own manager for health. You're your own manager for finances. Nobody but you has to take charge of it. And all you have to do is listen to experts and make up your own mind. And you have 2 things, and this is what Nick has, and this is what Garrett has, and that is common sense and the ability to reason. That's it. Let me say that one more time. Common sense and the ability to reason. That's all you need, and you have it inside of you. So when Nick found out that, hey, you know what? Maybe I don't slog 80 hours a week. Maybe I engage in what I'm now calling the 0-hour work week. That is total leisure to pursue education and culture, to refine yourself, to be all you can be. There's a future self you have out there. And that future self is all of you. And then there's a present self, and there's a gap. And closing that gap is your life's mission. That is the purpose in your life. When I told that to Nick, he found it inspiring. He said, hey, I've learned a lot. I said, no, you haven't. What you've done is uncovered stuff you already knew. It's already inside of you. You just have to bring it out. And meeting me is part of your journey. And you're going to meet other people like me. You're going to travel. You're going to talk to people. And each of us is going to have a story you can learn from, just like I learn from all the stories that I hear out here. So, to sum it up, limiting beliefs. You have to overcome them in order to be financially independent, to achieve early financial independence, to achieve early financial freedom. That's it. That's the only purpose of working. Don't give me this whiny excuse. I love my job. I love my job. A job has one purpose: financial freedom. If you love your job, that's fantastic. And if you love your job after you're financially free, go back to your job as you pursue education and culture. But financial freedom is the only goal you should have. That's my assertion. You may disagree. If you disagree, give me other data points, give me other assumptions. But go out there and question 2 things. Do you need a degree? The world is changing. You can learn everything you need off the internet these days. Go to YouTube. You can learn just about anything you need on YouTube. You can learn anything you need by just talking to people. Go wander around, come down to the Caribbean, talk to people at resorts. I mean, if somebody can pay, I don't know, $3,000 a night for a resort, they've got some financial resources. Ask them. Tell me your life story. Learn from them. So many people at my resort are business owners, which makes total sense. The tax system is based for business owners. It's not based for W-2 earners. That is, it's not based for people who get a salary from a big company. And so they're tax efficient. They can accumulate more capital. They can come out to places like this and spend time. So many of the people I met at my resort spend, 6 months wandering around the world while they're working because they own businesses. They have managers that manage their business. That is a strip of cash flow. If you own a business, start a business, have managers that manage the business, you pop out of your sailing boat once a month to sign some checks, that is passive cash flow. So a lot of these businesses are pursuing my strategy of accumulating strips of cash flow by having their own business. So with that, I'll leave you and we'll have our next talk soon, hopefully. Come out to the Caribbean. Life is too short. Stop working so much. Don't aim for the 2-hour work week. Aim for the 0-hour work week.